Hello, my name is Kathryn, and I'm with my other brother now, who I also hired for this job, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Andrew, and I'm recently graduated from UC Berkeley. I studied data science and had a concentration in applied math and modeling. So that was really good experience. And currently, I just started my first job at Goldman Sachs in Dallas, Texas. So I'm about 6 months in and excited to start my career.
Great, and then how long have you been with Swoon?
I have been at Swoon for about a year to a year and a half. I did it primarily towards the latter half of college, ever since my sister referred me to the job.
Okay, great. So I'll ask you a few questions. I'll start out with what do you think your students would say is your most defining characteristic as a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what my students would say is my most defining characteristic as an academic coach is definitely my intensity.
Hmm.
I think especially because the lessons are they're conducted via Zoom asynchronously, it's ever so harder to connect with the student. Therefore, I think intensity is the best way to increase connectivity between me and the student. And I do that by, I'd say, two things. The first way I'm intense is by constantly asking questions, like clarifying questions. When I say something, the student can always pretend like they understand, but I always follow up with clarifying questions to
Hmm.
confirm their understanding. The second is, I'd say, eye contact and being pretty close to the camera. I really want to capture their attention, maximize my capturing of their attention. So I really try to be as intense as possible. And I'd say that is what my students would say is a defining characteristic of me.
Okay, great. And as you said, you're very engaging with your students, but can you share a story about a student whose personality challenged you to adapt your coaching approach, and then how did you handle it?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. One of my students, he was in high school and he
Hmm.
was on the football team, and he struggled to find the connection between math and sports.
Hmm.
And I was teaching him in it was an algebra 1 class, and I think a lot of students struggle with this, finding the motivation to study. And
Hmm.
I think in order to increase the motivation, I got to know him at first. So the first couple lessons, I got to know him as a person. I got to learn his passions, what
Hmm.
he likes in life, and I learned that he's really into sports, right? Especially
Hmm.
football. So when I started creating my own set of math questions for him that was outside of his textbook, I made sure to tailor these questions in terms of like sports. So I would ask him, and I would use his name in the problem statement too.
Hmm.
So I think that immediately heightens his attention to
Hmm.
the lesson. So I think I think really knowing your student is so important because without that, it's impossible to tailor any customizable teaching towards to
Hmm.
him. So yeah, so that's what I did. Just custom made questions revolving around his passions to increase his attention and motivation in the subject.
Okay, great. And then you say you have a big background in sports, and as your sister, I know that. But I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to become an academic coach, and how does your passion for education align with Spoon Learning's commitment to student growth and empowerment?
Yeah, great question. So I think I've always loved mentoring and teaching younger students.
Hmm.
I've been a tennis coach for a big part of my life. I'd say almost 6 to 8 years now of
Hmm.
coaching private tennis lessons. I worked at a Nike tennis camp, worked with, over 100 kids from the ages of 6 to 18. And so how does this relate to my passion for teaching and education?
Hmm.
I think the main similarity between sports and school is overcoming mentally challenging, tasks.
Hmm.
So people think sport is always physical, right? But I would argue that sports is more of a mental challenge, than a physical challenge,
Hmm.
just as school is. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of students struggle not because they are dumb, but because they struggle with self confidence. And I think
Right.
that's the most important thing, to be good at anything. I think it's confidence and belief over any sort of intelligence, natural intelligence, and that's a big belief I've learned to develop. Just being myself, I used to be also a student of tutors, a student of tennis coaches, and
Hmm.
I recognize that, and I want to be able to give back these learnings I gained to the younger generation.
Great. And then, as you say, you learned, I mean, you've been on the flip side now. What do you admire most about the students that you work with, and how do their personalities inspire you now that you're kind of on the other side of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the first thing I can think of is I'm, like, surprised, shocked, impressed by students these days. I think everybody is getting a head start on life really early, like, kids from the age of 12 are already starting, like, coding boot camps. When I was 12, I didn't even know what coding was, and this really impresses me. I love this culture of learning. Like, I love the culture of learning and with the eventual purpose of using this learning to, make a career and finding purpose through whatever that career is. And about, my students as a whole is
Mhm,
their ability to take initiative.
mhm,
I think this especially is true for my older students.
mhm,
I feel like a lot of my younger students are, pushed by their parents, but a lot of my older students, I'd say, are very self-motivated. I
mhm,
remember one of my students, he took initiative on trying to access my network. Being in college, I have a lot of friends, going to work for big tech companies, and one of my students was really interested in software engineering at Amazon. So
mhm,
I got to learn more about him, and I really liked how he got a lot of value out from, not only me teaching, but also, my personal life, which is
mhm.
my network and stuff. And he's smart because that will benefit him in the long run, getting early access to, these college students who are very soon going to be work in companies, big tech companies that my student wants to work in.
Okay, great. So those are all the questions I have for you today. And I just wanted to wrap it up with the fact that although you study data science or you study data science at
Mhm.
Berkeley, what kind of subjects do you work with? Because I mean, you've taken a lot of coursework over your life. So what are your favorites to work with? What have you worked with? And what do you hope to maybe tutor? Or maybe there aren't and you've done all of the subjects already.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So yeah, I've taught AP Calculus, AB and BC. I've taught graduate level statistics.
Hmm.
I was a data science major, so took a lot of those classes. I also mentored one of my students in applying to colleges, first community college, and then eventually to a 4-year college. And this student was also trying to study computer science slash data science. And then, in addition to those three I just mentioned, I also helped another student apply to a coding internship, a high school coding internship, in the
Interesting.
Bay Area. So that was another good experience. But I specialize in probability, statistics, and math, as those are all subjects that I myself have loved to learn.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, it was great to have you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Of course.